All right, so what we want to do then is we want to end the day by filling out what's called a brand script. It looks like this. These are the elements of story broken down, and you're going to come up with a sound bite for each and every one of these sections of this brand script. Now, you see this in your workbook. The first 2 pages of your workbook. One is a sample brand script that we made up a company that sells e-bikes, and I'm going to show you their brand script. And then the next brand script is for you. It's blank, and you can just write on it and fill it out. If you want to do this digitally, I've created a free piece of software at mystorybrand.com. Just write down mystorybrand.com. You can go to it now, or you can go to it at lunch, you can go to it later. You literally just create an account. It's a free account, and you can create as many of these brand scripts as you want. I've got hundreds of them. Every time I give a speech, I fill out a brand script. Every time I go into an important meeting, I fill out a brand script. This morning, I got up early. I'm working on a new book. I needed to write the introduction for that book. What did I do? I filled out a brand script. And so it just helps me communicate, helps me figure out my sound bites so I can move forward. So if you go to mystorybrand.com, you can create a free brand script. We're going to create one of these by the end of the day. You're going to work on it a little bit over lunch, and then I've got another tool that's going to be really, really powerful for you. What this is going to do is it's going to allow us to use the power of story to actually grow our business. You know, the average brain daydreams 30% of the time. 30% of the time you spend daydreaming. That's an amazing amount of time. But you know when you don't daydream, when you stop daydreaming? When Jason Bourne shows up on a screen and you begin to wonder why Jason Bourne doesn't know who he really is, right? I mean, you're done. You're in there for 90 minutes or 2 hours. In fact, you've got to eat a bucket of popcorn just to keep up with the calories that your brain is using, and you do not daydream. Story is the only tool we know of, the only tool known to man that can keep your attention for an extended period of time. It's so powerful that we get hooked on it. In fact, when you say, Don, why do you like the Seahawks so much, or why do you like football? Football's a story. It's the good guys, the Seahawks, against the bad guys, the Arizona Cardinals, and the good guys are having to go through a challenge in order to defeat the bad guys. If it's a comedy, the Seahawks win. If it's a tragedy, like the other night, the Cardinals win, right? And we're wondering, and there's subplots in the story. Each down is a subplot. Each time they punt the ball away, it's a subplot. The enemy has the ball. What we're attracted to in professional sports is not the sports or the action or the slam dunking. It's the narrative. It's the narrative. And you'll see as I unpack how narrative works, why this is true and how this is true. What you have to do then as a business is invite people into a story with very clear story elements so they are not confused. And if you do that, you're going to be able to win the day. Okay? Let me give you an example. Let's say you're at a cocktail party, and there's 2 different people at the party who do the exact same thing. They offer the same product or service. And you go up to one of them, and you say, you know, what do you do in the course of conversation? And they say, well, I'm an at-home chef. And you say, oh, that's interesting. Where did you go to culinary school? And what are your favorite things to cook? And what are your favorite restaurants? You begin to make small talk, you know, as anybody would in that situation. You are probably not going to buy their product or service. They are probably not going to come over to your house and cook anything. Now you meet the second person. The second person sells the exact same product, they charge the exact same price, and the quality is exactly the same. And you say to them, what do you do? And they say, well, you know how most families don't eat together anymore? And when they do, they don't eat healthy food? I'm an at-home chef. I come to your house, I cook healthy, great-tasting food so that your family can sit together and connect without the stress of making a meal. And not only that, you don't have to feel guilty when you're done eating. 2 different people offering the exact same product. You tell me who's going to do the most business. Just hold up, person 1 or person 2? Person 2. I'm seeing person 2 everywhere. It's true. Person 1 is not going to do any business. Person 2 is going to do all the business. Why? Because person 1 told them what he or she does. Chef number 2 invited them into a story. They invited them into a story in which they solved a problem in order to experience a climactic scene that made their life better. The problem was we don't eat as a family, we don't eat healthy. The product was At-Home Chef. The result was a climactic scene visual of me sitting around with my family, eating a meal, not feeling guilty, not feeling stressed, and all of us getting more healthy by the minute. They invited their customer into a story. So what I'm going to do over the day is help you understand how to invite customers into a story. And notice how long that little elevator pitch took at that cocktail party. It took 15 seconds. And that 15 seconds is the difference between one home chef business taking off and the other home chef business going into bankruptcy or going out of business, or that person getting a job as a waiter at a restaurant. It's all in the words. People are drawn to story. They love story. Now, on the average year, this year excluded for obvious reasons, Americans spend about $10 billion a year at the theaters. $10 billion. That's a lot of money. And why? Well, I think the reason they're spending so much money to go to these movies is not because of entertainment or because they want an emotional experience or whatever. I think some of that is true. But I think the reason they're going to movies is because they are looking for clarity. The human brain longs for clarity. So this is a really important point for you to understand. People will walk away from and ignore a muddled messaging scheme from your company, but they will be attracted to anything that is clear. In fact, I was amazed, if you look at the last political campaign, or presidential campaign, there were literally millions of people who could not decide between Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders. Those were the two choices that were standing out in their minds. Here's what's fascinating about that. These are the two polar opposite candidates in the field. However, they were the two candidates who were best using a narrative approach to campaigning. They were two candidates that had a very clear villain. They had a decently clear plan. There was a clear climactic scene. There was a clear injustice that was being imposed upon the American people, and those two candidates were going to rescue them from that injustice. In other words, they were both campaigning like the chef at the cocktail party, where they were making it clear what the story was. Almost everybody else, including Hillary Clinton, had such a muddled message you couldn't figure out what the story was. Now, the reality is Donald Trump is not doing that in this election. In 2020, he's gone berserk. It's just, there's no clarity whatsoever. And Joe Biden is not doing much better. So this election is a toss-up. I'm not sure. But that's what was happening back then. It was the clear message that was winning the day. People love clarity. And we all identify as heroes in a story. When I wake up in the morning, I've got 10 things I've got to do today. There's some vague climactic scene that's hanging out there. There's 30 things that are opposing me, and so on and so on. Let's just take the last 2 hours or 3 hours of my life. I got up early this morning before sunrise, spent about an hour working on a book that's due relatively soon, texted a little bit back and forth with my wife as she woke up later in the morning, got on a Zoom call with my staff sitting in the parking lot here where I'm speaking, had to answer some questions about those guys, was good on time to get to the stage, need to finish this workshop and interact with you and give you great value. Now, technically, that's a story. A character wakes up, has some things, important things to do, and needs to get them done. However, they're not going to make a movie about that story. Nobody's going to make a movie about it. Don Miller has to attend a Zoom call with his staff while still figuring out the mic check. There's nothing engaging or fun about that. We got all sorts of problems with that story. There's too many things going on. The stakes for whether Don gets it done are so unbelievably low, right? Did Betsy remember to feed the dogs? because I normally feed the dogs. I mean, God forbid the dogs would have to wait till lunch. Can you imagine that? Will the dogs have to wait till lunch to eat? Are they going to get their food this morning? This is not an interesting story. So when we actually go to a movie, what they're doing in the screenplay is they're filtering out all the boring stuff. And they're only leaving the exciting stuff. They're only leaving the high stakes. There are not 33 problems Jason Bourne has to figure out. There's one. There's one. Who am I? Right? The problem with some of our messaging is that we've thrown everything at the audience, at the potential customer, and they can no longer track with us. They're being confused. They're realizing they're going to have to burn calories in order to hang with you, and they're opting out of buying your products. Now, here's what's beautiful. How much do you think it would cost to fix that problem? How much would you pay? $50,000, $150,000, depending on how big it is, $250,000, $1 million? How much would you pay to fix that problem? Because it's the problem keeping you from growing. All right, get that number in your head. And now I want you to hear really good news. Words are free. The solution to your problem is free. It doesn't cost anything. Well, it costs you whatever you paid to be on this workshop, right? And words are where the real power is. It's going to cost you, though, a lot of mental energy. Maybe you're going to need somebody to hold your hand to help you through it. It's going to cost you something. Everything valuable costs you something. But this is a tiny investment considering the return that you are going to get. And we're going to get that return by using story, because story is a sense-making device. It makes sense of our world. All right, jazz hands if you still feel like you're in the right workshop, head in the right direction.